Okay. Hi everyone, and super nice to see all of you here and to have this discussion with you. So we had some challenge on the connection side, but we are all good and super excited to start. So we'll not wait any longer, and I will start by doing a short intro of our panel speaker today, and then we'll jump directly into a few questions that I prepared. And then we will open also for your questions. So feel free to also drop in the chat the question that you have, and then we will address them at the end of the session. So let me also okay. So again, great meeting you. So I'm Clément, founder and partner of SCOBY Collective. SCOBY Collective is it's a collective of expert soulful doers, and we come into organization to support on strategy and execution, and we have a focus on seaweed, and so that's why we are gathering today to discuss about seaweed funding, opportunities and complexity. And we have with us Louisa Cilenti. So Louisa, you started your career as a lawyer. You always had this kind of entrepreneurial mindset that leads you to start several companies, and more recently a fund manager and a fund leading strategic deals in the ocean positive initiatives. You were also awarded by the British Angel Association Award in 2022 for the best woman-led investment in innovation relating to blue biotech startup. The name of the startup is actually Oceanium. You are now the managing principal and co-founder of PH3 Capital Ventures, where you strategically invest in tech startup with a blue-green InfraTech solution, aiming at decarbonization the maritime industry, and with an early stage UK fund and a global later stage fund, if I'm right. You are also shaping sustainable practices as an independent board director at Oceanium and Blusink. So always to advance global sustainability and blue economy. So really nice to have you here today. And we have also the pleasure to have Steve Meller. You are an incredible innovator at the junction between entrepreneurship and research. You have a long track record leading research-based companies, and you are currently the CEO of CH4 Global Inc., a research lab spin-off to fight against climate change with Asparagopsis seaweed to significantly reduce methane emission from livestock. You have secured with this company recently 29 million in Series B funding, so a total investment of 47 million US to meet the growing demand for entering methane mitigation solutions. You also advise Bio-Pacific partners, connecting global markets with pioneer health, food, and agricultural advancement from Australia and New Zealand. And you really master in general, bringing environmental sustainability, innovation, innovative commercial strategy, and significant investor confidence all together. So thanks for being on the panel with us today. And last but not least, Morten, Kroslid founded and participated in the creation of over 20 companies. So that's really impressive. You specialize in technology and production with always an innovation piece. Your business exports in more than 30 countries, and are mainly focused on seaweed and the broader industry of seaweed. For example, there is Sirputis, a top tech provider for seaweed farmer in Europe, or SoftSeaweed, harnessing AI and big data for seaweed production optimization. So that's only two examples of the number of companies. Also, you invested in a few seaweed companies. So your work really reflects your commitment to sustainable development and smart technologies. So really, thank you to have you here as well on the panel today. And I will kickstart with kind of a question for all of you here, and maybe an evident question, but I would like to kickstart with this one. So what makes a seaweed company a great opportunity for you, and how different a good opportunity in the seaweed industry is compared to elsewhere? And I can add on that to give a bit more texture and give you a bit more time. Why did you invest in seaweed companies? So you can jump in. So it's an open question. So whenever you're ready, you can you can take on that one.
Unmute myself. So come on. To try to address your questions just in reverse order, why did we invest? So I invested not only my own money, but the last 5 years of my life into the seaweed company we have. It's and the aspect of Asparagopsis has some unique features to it amongst other seaweeds. So all of the seaweeds on the planet metabolically produce a whole array of different volatile, what are typically bioactives. Most of them are released into the ocean, they equilibrate with the atmosphere. But in Asparagopsis, it's created the machinery to store and concentrate these bioactives, about 100 of them or so, in well-defined vesicles inside of the seaweed plant called gland cells. And these gland cells are typical organelles. They're bilipid layered membranes that store and concentrate these materials. It has done it and developed them as its defense mechanism in the ocean against being eaten. But it turns out, to answer your question, sort of why seaweed and where it is for us, these little packages are effectively nature's way of packaging material that, if you can keep them intact in growing and processing the seaweed and deliver them to ruminants, animals with 4 stomachs, cows, sheep, goats, camels, deer, for example. There's 1.5 billion cattle on the planet, that they effectively, quite potently, reduce dramatically, and in many cases eliminate the production of methane from those ruminants. And so you've got a nature design system that addresses what is one of the larger problems we have today in terms of climate impact, and that is methane production from cows. And to give you a magnitude of that, it's 12.9 gigatons of production. That's more than the entire capacity of the entire greenhouse gas output of the entire country of China. It's more than the US, the EU27, India, and Russia put together. That's the size of the issue we have, but it's the size of the opportunity with this nature-designed unique aspect of seaweed. So that's why we invest our time and money into what we're doing, for that level of impact. So
I like that, like the impact-driven opportunity investment. So super nice to hear that, and it's truly also one of the most, what I understand, the most rapid impact that we can have on methane to actually mitigate the climate change. So thanks.
Yep.
Morten and Louisa, anything to add on that?
Yeah. Yes, look, I'll go in reverse order too. So why did I make and lead the investment into Oceanium, and why have I continued to support and back them? And I think move from being a seaweed enthusiast to a deep industry champion. But So, like many investors, I think, there's plenty of large challenges to tackle in terms of, climate, biodiversity, and all manner of other kind of, structural challenges around the economy. And I come from an industrial background. I come from coal and steel. So for me, I've always been drawn to solutions and products and services that are going to really transform industrial markets and really take us in a big way towards a more sustainable future. And I remember in 2018, many of you might have done, but there was a big feature by The Guardian about the first kind of, sargassum appearing on, beaches in the Caribbean. And thinking quite deeply about that was my first kind of connection with seaweed, and looking behind that, not just at the problem, but then I started to understand seaweed as I guess a really important biomaterial, and it was still an underexplored material. And then in 2019, at the back end of that, Oceanium came to Green Angel Syndicate, now Green Angel Ventures, seeking funding. And I suppose some of us had already started on that kind of theory of change and a thesis around the role of seaweed in as a problem solver for humanity. And that was my first real connection with actually seaweeds. It's a big mover across markets. Being an investor, we're also able to see that, the commercial seaweed market had the potential to be worth billions. But what we really needed was scale to drive that systemic change. And Oceanium really, they impressed us on so many levels, but they really stood out because their vision and strategy was to be an industrial player and to be an industrial scale processor into large industrial markets that made a difference around food and nutrition products. So, really, if we can, produce the protein from seaweed and, feed the 10 billion, then, that was a game changer. Bioactive nutraceuticals actively changing our health and well-being. Things around premium cosmetics, lower environmental impacts, and moving into compostable biopackaging. So it was two things that I think really came together. That belief, and that was 2019, 2020, that we were at start of seeing an industry exhibiting exponential growth, and we saw it early. None of the data married up, and that's an interesting, and I'm sure that will come out in the discussion today, but none of the data married up with that. But we saw an industry at the first tipping point of exponential growth, and a shared belief amongst a lot of investors, very early investors, that this was the industry of the future. So what makes an attractive investment proposition into a seaweed company? I guess I'm going to be naturally attracted to biorefineries and big markets, but ultimately being really strong on the market and impact potential of what you're doing, and the clear value proposition around that, and why you're going to compete. We can talk about China, and the kind of slight backlash we're having right now on prices and the green premium, but really understanding what it means to compete in big markets, and supported by a business model and a plan that shows how you're going to get there. So I think that's enough from me just for the minute.
Thanks a lot.
Morten, thanks. Take the short story here now. My introduction to the seaweed industry started back in 2016. I was at that time running an engineering company in Lithuania, and the founders from Arctic Seaweed in Norway came to me and asked me to help them to solve the scaling of the seaweed industry, like how to actually build equipment that would help them to scale offshore seaweed farming. So that's back in 2016, and after that, the ball started rolling, and of course I became more passionate about the industry and get to understand the environmental impact, sustainability arguments, and all these things. So I started out working with other clients too, developing seaweed equipment from nursery to processing equipment like seeding machines and so on, and started working with the other bigger players in the market, and it turned also out to investments into other seaweed farmers, and lately also SoftSeaweed, which is the software company supporting also seaweed farmers to scale the activities. And I think everybody here understand that the seaweed industry, they need to scale, and of course to optimize, mechanize in order to succeed and become profitable. So when I look also into seaweed companies, yes, I look at their business model. Can they be profitable in the near future? And just lately, we see that seaweed farmers actually, some of them are becoming profitable. And that's really great to see, and also to see that all the players in the value chain starting to cooperate closer with each other, and that's, I think the industry is in need of closer collaboration across countries and inside the different countries, because the volumes are too low at the moment for most of the, especially in European countries, to really build an industry. But if everybody cooperate, I think it will be, the innovation process or will go much faster. So that's I'm a big promoter of that establishment of cooperations among the players, and of course academia also, which I see that there is a lot of things to take out and use from them into the commercialize the results from the academia.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I really love. I totally agree on the collaboration part. This is, I'm pretty new in the seaweed industry, and this is something that stand out. It was really much the fact that everyone collaborates in different parts of the supply, the value chain, and with also the support from academia and so on. So yeah, I totally agree on that. And because you mentioned it about the business model and so on, Morten, I want to jump into a question I had for you. Was do you see actually? Do you have a specific business model or type of businesses that you like investing in, or that you think are more suitable for investment in the seaweed space? Because it's true that the scale is an issue, and so that kind of limit also the spectrum of type of companies. And yeah, so happy to have your kind of perspective on that.
Yeah, I'm coming also from software industry, and that that's much easier to scale B2B SaaS solution than some kind of equipment. So I'm coming from equipment side, engineering, the industrial side, but also the software side. So if you can find ways here to combine this and less capital intensive scaling, like here we speak about better, more creative financing solutions, which the industry actually lacks. And that is, I think, due to the fact that lack of certification solution and lack of insurance. I speak with many farmers. There is a lack of opportunities to actually insure their business, insure their seaweed farm, get them the farm certificated. So reduce the risk again for the investors. So I'm looking at yes, how can you actually reduce the risk for you as an investor? And yes, the software was one of the ideas. which I established then, you know, control your whole business with a software, monitoring the seaweed farm, getting all the data you need from the ocean. You cannot actually influence the ocean. It's there. But then you have to place the seaweed farm where you get the best yield. So any farmer, land-based farmer, they also choose their plots according to you know, where is the best yield. So in the ocean also have different properties. Yeah, and the current, you know, you speak about the temperature, nutritions and so on, where you get different yields and yes, different species to grow. So yeah, that was the short answer.
Super interesting. Thanks a lot for that. I like the yeah, kind of looking at scale in low capital intensive, and also one thing that we will discuss again about is the innovative way of financing and the issues on the insurance side, which is seems to be a big issue for farmers. Yeah. Louisa, do you see a specific area of the value chain that struggle the most in terms of fundraising? So here we were also looking at all the things to support farmers. So this is kind of the early part of the value chain, but yeah, do you see any area?
I think that's, look, yeah. It's a really good question, and I suppose you know, just looking at, you know, classic, I suppose, investor framework, but and it was good to see the Standard Chartered reports. I think if people, Standard Chartered Bank, haven't seen that, I think it really gave a really big boost for farming and for the viability and strength of business models for seaweed farming. But that's the area that I think investors are struggling with most because of two things. One is, and Morten's done super well to bring in the tech and the autonomy and you know, sensor technology and other things to you know, I'm just not sure if that's the headphones, but you know, investors like tech, and they like defensible tech into products and services. So farming's always struggled more to get a little bit more of that active attention. And then there are other investors, and we're seeing it more, farming into low level and even you know, more sophisticated processing. You know, investors, I'd say this next lot of investors are getting quite buzzy about the full vertical integration and whether you can do all things. That's not personally where I'm at, but I hear that people get quite excited about farming through to end markets and controlling that entire value chain. So yeah, I still think that, you know, there's more barriers with financing the seaweed farming, and you know, insurance is really important. In Korea, we see that you can get insurance for crop failure, for example. I'm not even sure we're even here at the beginning of that type of insurance policy in European and Western markets. So you know, we've got a lot of work to do, and I think there's still this this split in the impact world about crofting versus large scale, and the sustainability of us doing industrial scale farming. I think we need to kind of, you know, try and knock that on the head, but you know, that's still a question mark. I think that lingers about the type of scale of farming practices that we need to aim for, so that we can, you know, kind of, you know, really produce large volumes into those bigger markets. So yeah, and everything else has got, you know, different challenges, but I'd say that's the most under invested area at the moment.
Okay, cool. Also, I just wanted to mention that it's directed question to Louisa, but anytime if you also want to react on something that someone else say, please don't hesitate to unmute yourself and jump into the conversation.
Yeah, and I did just want to add one point, Clement, just on that last question. I'm on the opposite contrarian view. So for me and some other investors, I'm happy to back long tail, long duration, high risk investments into pharmaceuticals, for example. Some of the work that Oceanium and others are doing to show the role of seaweed-based bioactives into gut health and arresting cognitive decline, for example, I think is really exciting. So, you know, for the right type of innovation, I think the investment would be there. So I wouldn't want everyone to just start to feel that, you know, if it's a little bit capital heavy, we need to kind of squeeze this down into something that, you know, investors are really, you know, going to get behind, and we can scale that. You know, it really depends on, you know, the transformative impact that you're trying to achieve as to, you know, whether you're going to, you know, bring the investors along with you, I'd say.
Yeah, but it's super nice to have both type of investors, so that there is solution for everyone there. So, but great to also add this, that there is some moonshot potential, and that will actually create the perfect transition to my next question to Steve, which is, with your experience in really like moonshot kind of innovative companies, what advice would you give to founders who are in that situation of kind of a long innovative journey to commercialization?
Develop a thick skin is the first piece. Actually, a lot of what Morten and Louisa have talked, I think, is relevant to that answer. So let me touch on a couple of points to it. First, just to clarify, we actually grow the seaweed that we're doing in control conditions on land. We do that, but clearly it's a native species in the ocean. But we've found through trial and error, mostly error, that it is not commercially feasible to grow Asparagopsis into the markets that it needs to go at any level of scale profitably. It's just not going to happen. Anyone that tells you they're trying to do it will fail. There's no question. That's due to a whole bunch of reasons: the seasonality of the species, the levels, the variable levels of the bioactives. We're not trying to extract those bioactives. That puts you into a different regulatory category. You don't want to be in that other regulatory category of a veterinary medicine product in here. It's going to take you down a path of 3 to 5 years and tens of millions of dollars of study, when you don't need to do that if you can find a way to utilize the entire seaweed, which is what we do. So being able to do that and understand the complexities of the life cycle, and coupled with that, the optimal ways to grow it on land, has been a challenge. That's been part of that journey. In that side of it. For us, we've been fortunate to have found investors, as Louisa mentioned, who are in it for the long haul. They see what the goal of what we're trying to do. As you said, it's a moonshot. It is an obviously an enormously impactful opportunity if we can achieve the level of scaled success that we hope to, and certainly incredibly profitable too, to be clear. That's why they back it. But you know, our two primary key investors and several who are now coming along understand that. And so that's a piece of advice. Not every investor, in fact, most, aren't going to be in some of these things for the long haul. They're going to want a, let me churn it around. I've got 5 years in terms of my harvest time in here. I need to get revenue out of you. You're either going to be, you know, IPO'd or acquired, or I'm not going to invest anymore. So, but they're out there. These types of investors, in particular in the world of impact around climate change and Earth-related systems that improve our ability to continue to live as a species. So, but it's hard work finding them. I can't tell you the number of doors that I've knocked on and the conversations that I've had. It took me more than twice as long to raise this round, which will end up being about $50 million in total. Took me almost twice as long as I anticipated it would. The economic conditions have certainly contributed to that. And we know that, you know, venture industry in general is down significant double digits, up to 40% across most of the sectors. So there are some good companies who aren't going to get funded. So that just makes the work even harder, unfortunately. And I think the predictions are, and Louisa's in a much better position to comment on this than me, but I think the predictions are certainly through much of 24, that's going to continue to still be the theme. So the challenges are there. You've got to have a good story, and a good story that talks about impact. You've got to have a great team. I can't emphasize that enough. Our team is stacked purposefully with people who have had long and storied careers, generally in Fortune 100 companies, of building and scaling billion-dollar businesses. I've been fortunate enough to bring them along and come and join us in their expertise areas in here. So a great story, a great team, and a great platform or an opportunity that you can convincingly show that you can get to profitability. And both Morten and Louisa mentioned this, and I cannot emphasize it enough. Profitability is the only thing that gets you to scalability. What we're in, unfortunately, is a fairly capital intensive business when we build on land for the growing and the processing sides. We've just brought on a CFO who has exited his last two companies at multi-billion-dollar exits. He's really good at finding those alternative sources of scaling capital to build that in here, successfully having done so. Again, it comes back to what I mean by a good team and marrying it with where you now need to go. So starting to piece those things together, you know, to demonstrate scale, not only do you need profitability, I think there's three legs to this stool. It's profitability of what you're doing, ideally in gross margins that exceed 30 to 40%. You need to not just be a little bit profitable, you need to show that you're a lot profitable. You need to be able to show demand. And demand comes from not just saying there's lots of people who would buy this. You need to have it in hand. We have some contractual relationships now, the first of which we announced for the supply to the entire country of South Korea, all 4 million cattle, supported by the government and one of the largest companies in South Korea, Lotte, our partners within there. We could never have gone into South Korea, but the South Korean government and Lotte wanted to do this. So demand displayed in that way, and then finding ways to creatively access, in our case, hundreds of millions of dollars of capital scale to build the scale to support that demand. Those three things, you're going to have, at least in our part of the industry, elements of those stories that come together. You don't have to have them all sewn up, but you need to show that you can get to them. At least that's my experience where we are at the moment. So,
super helpful. Thanks a lot, Steve. If you want to jump in, Louisa or Morten, to add something on this, otherwise I'll jump on the next question.
I'm fully agree here with Steve, and just small to add here, something to add here is combining the possibility to have some grant funding, and also you all know about the possibilities in accelerators, because investors are looking at companies who actually qualify for accelerators and possible grants. So it's much easier then to scale when you have that money. And as Steve say, there is many ways of financing the scaling with the banks also, and it's easier when you have experts like Steve have now on the team, who have some bigger experience in the huge larger companies. So yeah, really supporting that, and that's my experience also. You need a great team, and the team that really can go scale.
Nice. Yeah, and I noted on the CFO piece where he helps also kind of finding those innovative financing ideas, financing solutions. Yeah. Great. So kind of another question on kind of what stage do you think it is the hardest to raise for, and how could we fix that, or how should maybe the industry be more innovative to find those to kind of fill this gap, and kind of broadening this question to what innovative financing you have found that you could suggest to founders?
For me, I think the pre-seed stage is good. You know, you've done enough just to prove it, whatever you're doing basically works. You know, you've won a few competitions. You know, there's a little bit of a buzz around the company. You've got the first bare bones of a really strong team, and full of promise. So I think pre-seed is probably for me the easiest stage to invest at. I think where it gets difficult is at a really solid seed stage, and this is where, you know, it's really important what investor group that you started to build around you, because either at that really strong seed stage, you're under pressure to be already looking like you're ready to enter market, and have you know, contracts in sight, which is really tough if you're still in, you know, a quite advancing R&D stage, which many still are at seed stage. So I think that's really tough, because the first pressures really come to show a quicker route to market, and access to customers and committed customers, and ideally some first underpinnings of customer interest. So I think that's really, really challenging. The jump to A, again, though, is not straightforward, because you've got to have got through that next jump in your scaling. Particularly, you know, if you know, you've got a sort of refinery plant, you know, we've really got to prove from a full engineering build out point of view that from a cost, yield, performance, everything else, that, you know, that's all going to come together and work. And we really do have sight of customers now still. And Steve, I'm sure you're going to say that it gets even harder at B, but and it does, right? So I don't think there's an easy stage, because what you have to show at each stage is really challenging, and probably out of sync. I think this is the real challenge. You're out of sync with your peer groups in other industries and sectors. That's the problem. So your benchmarks about where you're at don't always correspond to other more fast-moving sectors.
So I would agree 100% with Louisa's comments. I think if you were to go and look, and there's historical data out there, and I can't get the numbers, can't remember them exactly correct. It's what is the percentage of the number of companies that traditionally go from a pre-seed to a seed, and a seed to an A, and an A to a B, and onwards in here. And what you'll find from that is those sort of moving from an A successfully into a B is the majority of companies typically are moving through there. It's 90+%. Going from pre-seed to seed, it's a much lower number as it is from seed to A. I don't remember the exact numbers. The dilemma that we have today is the economic environment that we're in, have been in for all of 23, and I think the predictions are at least for all of 24, which really affects us all now, because not many companies have funding to get them through till 2025 right now. So this is the world we live in. Those numbers don't apply. And that's really the predicament, that number of moving from A to B is going to be dramatically lower, simply because there's just 40% less capital being given out across the board. And there are good companies in portfolios who are not getting funded now, and I meant even later stage ones. So So you could look at the historical data and take some solace from that, but we live in today's world, and it's not going to get that much better, at least for a while. And so so it is tough on all of those things. I think, as Louisa said, clearly in the pre-seed round, there are a lot of people who are willing to place modest sized bets on interesting opportunities and look for them, and perhaps even into the next phase. It depends a little bit on the sector that you're in, I think. But as you get more mature as a company, it definitely is going to take you more than twice as long. And you're going to have, I think the comment that was made, I was at a meeting in Singapore last week on animal and agriculture tech. And the comment that was made around this same sort of question is the bar has been raised several levels, not just a little bit. I think that was a good phrase to use about what you have to have at each stage now. And it's almost like it's jumped a level. Well, you really need the B level stuff at the A level, you know, at the Series A now, but that's what I mean by it's raised the bar significantly on the conditions to move along. So unfortunately, this is just what we have today.
Okay.
And the other thing I'd say, just not just the macro environment, but you know, there's this temptation to still see it's coming. I love the fact that, you know, Standard Chartered banks say, you know, kelp's on the way, but seaweed is not a standalone investment vertical. Okay, that's the thing you've really got to understand. So, you know, if you're producing food and nutritional products, you know, the alt protein market took a hammering this year. Right? So it's really hard to kind of see where investor sentiment's at, and unfortunately it goes in hypes. It'll come back and it'll settle down, but you know, you're also having to look at you know how those particular markets are being affected. And you know, actually this is the first time in 5 years we've seen climate tech hit really hard too. So you know, things go in unfortunately a few fashions. And that's really hard to kind of time. So yeah, all you can keep doing is putting your best foot forward. But I think it's really important to understand the deep verticals that you're in and how you know, investors are looking at those markets.
Yeah, super true. And but honestly, I'm super excited with all this advice. I'm not excited with the scenario of the market today, but I mean the really insightful comment that you make, and I would like to also give you some time if you have something you wanted to share or address within this call, or any call to action for our guest today. Letting you maybe share this while I'm kind of will check some of the questions that we have from the audience and send them your way. Yeah, so don't hesitate if you have a call to action, something you want to address. Morten, Louisa, or Steve, go ahead.
So actually, I like what Louisa said at the end, and I think it's a mindset way of thinking, and we're at a bit of a dilemma. We talk about seaweed in many different forums. Just use the Standard Chartered Bank summary in here, the call that we're having, and yet Louisa is 100% right. There is no seaweed sector. It competes in individual ones. We're in the food and ag one, right? Yeah. That's what we provide, something into the food and ag sector. That's the sector we compete in, with everything else in there, for both fighting for money and fighting for our shares of portions of markets in here. And I think that's true. And I'm not sure there ever will be a seaweed sector per se. It's going to compete into the categories that exist traditionally, whether it's cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, food and beverage, plastics and materials, and we could go down a long list. So I think in a sense, we do ourselves a disservice by always talking about it as the seaweed industry, and seaweed is a vehicle within each of those markets. And that's a bit of a trade-off. You don't get the press release around seaweed if you don't talk it that way to raise its awareness. But the reality is they're the sectors we compete in. It's not going to be, I don't believe, ever a seaweed sector per se. It's going to be in those categories. So that's actually an important way to think about what you frame. We've always talked about it that way. It is a vehicle for us to impact, in this case, ruminant methane and climate tech. We call ourselves a climate tech company. We're not a seaweed company. We're a climate tech company. It's what we do.
Nice. I like that. Yeah.
A small comment on this is also the challenge of teaching the bigger family office and VCs in understanding the seaweed industry, or what we can say, how to apply it and the business inside this. Here I see a huge challenge because nearly no VCs have a lot of experience in this industry field. So it's risk for them, assumed risk for them, and still it's in the early stage, the industry using this into the food and feed. Now pharmaceuticals, of course, and cosmetics, they have been using it for a longer time. Cargill, L'Oreal. So there is good, and I think we should follow up more the whole sector here, like follow up with the big players here. Procter & Gamble, L'Oreal, Unilever, Nestle, where you can actually get the big volumes, of course, with the cattle or the feed for cattle and for the fish even. So there is opportunities there, but yeah, it's an educational job to do in the market.
Yeah, Morten, you're so right, and I'm going to make the point that when Oceanium came in 2019, and we looked at their business model, in UK and Ireland, there were 9 farmers producing a total of 400 tons of seaweed. We gave them $2.7 million, but at their full capacity plant, that's over 30,000 tons of processing, and you can do some maths as to what that looks like at 2030 as a fully commercial business. So there was no seaweed supply. And this is where, this alignment's really important, and you've got to build the picture with the investors, as I said, about exponential growth and what all the hallmarks are of that, because when they started in 2018 to where we are now, that market has massively shifted. It's not moving, it's moving very fast. We all need it to accelerate even more, but we've really got to kind of look at, those growth drivers, and there's a little bit of a leap of faith that's needed, because the data isn't going to support it. When we looked at, if you just did your due diligence, you'd just go, that's it. There's no supply chain. How is that business going to scale?
Yeah. So I meet this challenge. Most of the seaweed farmers we work with today, they can manage small volumes. Most of the seaweed farmers, but immediately when you go to 100 tons or 500 tons, I think everybody here understands that there is coming a lot of bottlenecks through through the whole value chain here. And yes, the one thing is processing. It's easy to seed and cultivate and maybe harvest, but it's very difficult to preserve or process that seaweed because you need to process it very fast. So here is it's a huge challenge still, which I know most of the seaweed farmers is working on, and of course we are working on to help them.
Nice. So we have one question so we have several questions, but I will pick the one that is more related to funding. So what is the most common reason you turn down funding opportunities for startups? That might be more directed to Louisa, but I think also Morten, you invest in seaweed companies. You advise a VC firm, Steve. So please jump at any time.
Yeah. I can start out. Normally, yes, we had it as Steve and Louise said. The team is really important. I think a great team, they can achieve everything, and then ambitious, being ambitious enough. We see here too many maybe this enthusiastic seaweed people who want to change the world, be part of this how to say movement. Making some impact on this world, but it's not enough to just start a seaweed farm and we will try to contribute to make the world better. So I want to see the figures. I want to really see the figures, and of course nowadays in this market we have today, investors want to see profitability faster than before. And the seaweed industry is capital expensive, so it is to find ways to scale without spending the investors' money, like so much investors' money. Better find other ways of funding them. So turning down, yes, it's the team, the business model, the way to profitability. And yes, is there something unique? Because starting up a seaweed farm, for example, it's not really interesting if there is not something uniqueness there. So yeah, the business model there, find a way to really make it different, unique. And here, yeah, there is not too many of those. But here I would love to have more opportunities here to look at.
Cool, and the lack of ambition. I noted the lack of ambition is also one thing to turn down. Okay.
Yeah.
I agree with all those, and the only thing I'd just add to that, Morten, is the impact story, which again I think comes back to scale of impact and transformation. And you really do need to tell that story well, which ties into the ambition, I think. How big a change can we make?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give you almost like the reverse example, but to make the point, and I think thematically it's along the lines that Morten and Louisa were just talking, sort of alignment, partnerships. And I view investors, companies that one would invest in, as well as those who invest, in our case, in us, as partners. That's really what you want. You don't want just a sum of money and someone pressuring you to do so. So we've turned money down from investors that aren't aligned with our goals and strategies. Now, someone can say to me, you're crazy turning down money. But again, you don't want to have this constancy of an interaction with your investors, whether you're investing in or they're investing in you, that is going to be a drain on your resources and time. You have a mission to accomplish. And the more help, support that you can get beyond financial, it's incredibly important. So your investors, or who you invest in, I think have to be those that you're aligned on the mission with and the goals, but also aligned in ways to be able to help and facilitate that. So I think it goes both ways, but that theme is, I think, through what each of the three of us have said. Can't emphasize enough. It's your story, it's your impact, it's your team, and these are all part of who you are as an entity. And who you are, you don't want to try to change who you are because someone wants a different objective out of it. You've invested your time, your effort, and sometimes your own money into getting it to where it is. You want people who see that and want to help bring you along that road. Now, that may help correct course a little bit, but that's part of their role. So it's incredibly important on that alignment, I think.
Amazing. I like that. Yeah. Super nice. We are about to close. Maybe there is one question on capacity training. So is there a capacity training opportunity for those who want to engage in the seaweed production in West Africa, Ghana? So if you have some information here, you can also share it here or pass it to me, and I will send it to this person. It's a bit specific, but I'm sure there is. I just don't know exactly the answer today, but. Anyway, thanks a lot. I mean, please share it with me if you come up with this info. Anyone also from the audience, if you have it, please share it on the chat. And yeah, amazing session. Really, thank you so much for this discussion. And happy to see you in this industry another time. So. Bye.
Thank you
And
very much.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Good
very
luck
much
to everyone. Thank you all very much.
Good luck, everyone.
Best
Yeah.
wishes.
And feel free to contact.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye then.
Bye.